The Wednesday, November 16th, 2016 DRCOG board meeting to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Connie, if you'll take the roll.
Eva Henry.
She said, "How you doing, Eva?" Sorry, it's all Ashley.
Bill Holland. Nancy Sharp. Elise Jones.
Here.
David Beacom. Tim Mock. Chrissy Fanganello. Anthony Graves. Robin Kniech. Kevin Flynn. Roger Partridge. Gail Watson. Don Rozier, Libby Zabo, Bob Pfeiffer, John Marriott, Bob Roth, Renee Peterson, Larry Vidham, David Spellman, Aaron Brockett, Ann Justin, Lynn Baca, George Teal, Doris Chular, Ron Engels, Catherine Hyder, Laura Chrisman, Alex Brown, Richard Champion, Gail Christie, Rick Teeter, Debbie Nasta, Steve Conklin, Joe Jefferson, Jeff Deacon, Daniel Dick, Carolyn Scharf, Daniel is here, Lisa Jones, Laura Brown, Lynette Kelsey, Scott Norquist, Saoirse Karis Graves, Casey Brown, Ron Rakowski, Mike Hillman, Brad Weasley, Stephanie Walton, Shakti, Jerry Bean, Phil Cernanek, Bruce Beckman, Jackie Millay, Joan Peck, Gabe Santos, Ashley Stolzman, Connie Sullivan, Colleen Whitlow, Deborah Jerome, Sean Forey, Chris Larson, Kyle Mullica, John Dyack, Sally Daigle, Rita Dozal, Adam Matkowski, Eric Montoya, Herb Atchison, Joyce J., Adam Zarin, Deborah Perkins Smith, Bill Van Meter, and we do have a quorum.
Well, next we want to introduce new members and alternates, but let me start first to say congratulations. I understand every DRCOG board member who was up for re-election was re-elected. Yay! Why don't all of us who were in that category raise our hands so people know? Oh, we can stand up. All right, we'll stand up. Roger, did you break a leg? Oh, Roger was also re-elected. Oh. He's shy. Well, I appreciate everybody who was both working and getting reelected. I know how tiring that can be. So to show up to a DRCOG meeting is a wonderful thing. So thank you. We have two alternates who are newish to DRCOG that I would want to introduce and announce. Councilmember Carolyn Scharf is the new alternate for Federal Heights. I don't know if she's here. Okay, we're still happy to have her. And then Joyce Palazewski is the new alternate for Meade. And is she? Stand up, please. All right. All right. Well, thank you all for thank you for being here tonight. We'll move on now to approve the agenda. I'd consider a motion. Moved in second. All in favor? Opposed? We have an agenda. With that, we will move on to the meat of the meeting tonight is our public hearing on MetroVision 2040. And I have a script to read. Make sure I get this right. So good evening. I'm Elise Jones, Chair of DRCOG. I thank you all for coming tonight. This evening, the Denver Regional Council of Governments is holding a public hearing on the proposed Metro Vision Plan. In its role as the Regional Planning Commission for the Denver region, DRCOG is responsible for creating a plan for the region. Since 1997, this plan has been known as Metro Vision. The Metro Vision Plan does not replace the vision for any individual community. Rather, it is a tool to promote regional cooperation on issues that extend beyond jurisdictional boundaries. This public hearing of the Denver Regional Council of Governments is hereby convened. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for all who are interested in the proposed Metro Vision Plan to provide comments to the board. No decisions will be made or actions taken tonight related to this public hearing. The board views public comment as an integral part of the decision-making process, so we very much welcome and appreciate your input. Anyone wishing to speak should register on the sign-in sheets on the table in the reception area, or should have previously made a request through the DRCOG website or by phone. All comments previously received via email, website, or in writing are automatically included in the public hearing record. Any comments received prior to this meeting have been provided to the board. And I think there's a packet at everyone's seat. If you wish to submit written testimony to be included in the official record of the hearing, please give it to the secretary after you speak. Board members are free to ask questions of those testifying. Brad Calvert of DRCOG staff will now summarize the proposed Metro Vision Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see a very full room this evening. I will say a fair amount of this presentation will hopefully feel like information, particularly those board members and alternates will sound familiar. So in many ways this is to also kind of refresh your memory and maybe sort of inform the audience of some things that obviously this group has been working on for quite some time. As the chair mentioned to sort of open the hearing, MetroVision is something that we do at DRCOG in our role as the Regional Planning Commission for the Denver region, and historically that has also informed other roles such as our role as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. To kind of give you a quick summary of the last 5 or so years, we've been working on this plan for quite some time. Way back in May of 2011, the board adopted guidance to staff to help direct the development of the plan, and have been doing obviously a lot of work since that time. I would like to just point out really the board's role in creating the draft that was released to the public for comment back in September. A solid 15, 16 months of conversation to ultimately create that draft plan, which is obviously the subject of tonight's hearing. In terms of the overall public review process, as I mentioned previously, this board acted in September to release the draft plan for public review and comment. The public comment period actually ends tonight. The public hearing closes that comment period. Comments received to date are provided in your packet, so there were maybe 4 or 5 that came in time to get the packet out. The item that the chair was mentioning kind of looks something like this. We got about 24 sets of comments today and yesterday, which obviously was not in time to make your packet, but we also wanted to obviously be respectful of those comments and put them in front of you this evening, despite the fact that you obviously are not taking action this evening. This slide notes that board action could occur as soon as December. Based on the volume of comments that came in today, it's very likely that will actually be January. We want to be respectful of those comments and have time. Doug and I were talking today. I don't think I read a single word of any comment that came in today. It was send it to the printer, staple it, make sure it's ready. So to give the amount of time and attention that those comments deserve, to put them back in front of you, potentially with some staff feedback, it's going to take a little bit of time, just given the volume, particularly the volume that came in the last 48 hours or so. So very quickly, some background. This board has been working on regional planning for 60 years. I mean, that is why this organization exists. For the past 20 years or so, that regional plan has been under sort of the brand of MetroVision. And so this isn't one of a series of updates that have happened to that plan over the last 20 years, a pretty substantial and hopefully meaningful update for sure. Just sort of some things to keep in mind. You know, the plan is a shared guiding vision of obviously the board of directors and hopefully a set of outcomes and objectives and initiatives that our many partners can also consider around the region can consider. We think of it as aspirational, long-range, and regional in focus. I would not consider it a policy document. It is very much a guiding vision. But its implementation success is really dependent on many actors around the region. But obviously, the things that those folks choose to implement should fit with community context and their own local and organizational priorities. For those that sort of spent the last 15 months with us really going through the document to create the document that was released, its public review draft, we very much followed our internal DRCOG strategic planning model. This is sort of that version of that, and worked through a series of sort of preliminary board actions to get to the draft that was released back in September. Through our structure and governance conversation, the board adopted a new mission and vision back in February of 2014, and then a whole series of, again, preliminary actions beginning in January of this year for components of the plan that were then sort of rolled into the draft document that, again, was released in September and is the subject of tonight's hearing. I am not going to tell you, sort of cover in detail what is in the 70 some odd pages of the document. I will just sort of mention kind of some key things. The plan is sort of oriented around 5 overarching themes, which are on the screen tonight and in the presentation in front of you. As I've been making the rounds, talking about this plan to many stakeholders around the region, I typically characterize the first 3 as pretty traditional to what MetroVision has covered. It is focused traditionally on sort of growth and development issues, transportation and mobility, and the environment. But in this case, in this update through the stakeholder engagement process and through your own deliberation, the plan has been expanded to include topics like healthy, inclusive, and livable communities, including things like housing, as well as sort of the role of the built environment in public health, as well as focusing on a vibrant regional economy. Just quick notes on some of the new areas of emphasis that I just alluded to. 2 of those are housing and economic vitality that really began with starting points of strategies that were developed over the past couple of years. And we actually had board ad hoc committees that really rolled up their sleeves and drafted the outline that really began the process to create the draft document that's in front of you this evening. So a lot of direct contribution very early from board members in developing particularly these 2 new areas of emphasis. A few others, the topic of community health and wellness was something that came up repeatedly during the stakeholder engagement process, and we were very involved with sort of health stakeholders throughout the process. Another topic that was a really key piece of stakeholder engagement was this notion of community resiliency. The plan has a focus on resiliency, hazard mitigation, and recovery. This was a consistent message throughout the stakeholder engagement process, not just from communities that have been recently impacted by fire and flood events, but from communities around the region that understood the impacts that come with those events and the need to prepare for them. One other thing that I would not characterize as necessarily new, but certainly through the process was elevated, and that is an outcome related to the importance of having a region that is comprised of diverse and livable communities. That one of the big draws and economic benefits that this region has is a wide array of communities that ultimately make it attractive to businesses, to talent workers. We have people that move here and want to stay here because of the quality of life and the variety of communities that are available to them to live and to work. And I think that was traditionally part of the MetroVision conversation, but we really, again, largely through the stakeholder and committee conversations, have elevated that in the plan. And then also a key piece is obviously overall performance measures for the plan. The plan includes 13 regional performance measures. The stars here kind of indicate items that were really part of the previous MetroVision plan that we are, this document is an update to, where that measure existed in the previous plan, but through the process, a new target for, in this case, 2040, it was included in the plan. We do have some areas, some examples that were actually included just as they appeared in MetroVision 2035. They appear in this update, and then we actually have several that were new measures that were included in the draft plan. So including these 2 related to congestion. We actually, in the last plan, did not have a regional measure related to congestion, but through the board deliberation process, it was decided that it's important enough that we should measure it. And because it can be measured so many different ways, we really kind of focused on 2 measures in the draft plan. Same information here, some new things, some things that really kind of carried over just as they were in the previous version of the plan. And the plan also includes a series of what are called strategic initiatives. These are just sort of ideas for implementation, both at the regional and local level, and they're oriented towards kind of 3 or 4 different types of categories: collaboration, policies, regulations, investment, education, and assistance. And then again, on the next steps piece, as I mentioned previously, public comment closes at the end of this hearing. Our job as staff is to then collect those comments and provide feedback to the board. That's where the movement of the December board meeting has made that difficult for us to guarantee that we can be respectful of those comments and give you really good, thoughtful feedback on those. So that's why really this is looking very much like January will be the time that you will consider this for action. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Brad. So the hearing is now open for those who have signed up to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to testify. If you have not finished by the end of 3 minutes, I will ask you to conclude your remarks. And we ask that you not repeat specific points made by prior speakers. A simple statement of agreement with prior testimony is acceptable and appreciated. When you hear your name called, please approach the microphone area and be prepared to testify when the preceding speaker is finished. So with that, we have a sign-up sheet, and we'll ask if there are additional folks at the end. So the first person is Dr. John Douglas.
Good evening. I'm Dr. John Douglas. I'm the Executive Director of the Tri-County Health Department. We serve Adams, Arapahoe, and Douglas counties and over 25% of Colorado's residents. I'm here this evening to demonstrate my support for the Metro Vision Plan, especially the outcomes that support the development of healthy, inclusive, and livable communities through increased opportunities for safe walking and cycling, access to parks and trails, access to healthy foods, and connection to health services. I'm also here on behalf of something called the Metro Denver Public Health Partnership. This is a collaboration of 6 health departments across our 7-county region: Boulder County Public Health, Broomfield Public Health and Environment, Denver Public Health and Environmental Health, Jefferson County Public Health, as well as ourselves. As noted in a letter submitted to DRCOG today, our partnership views the Metro Vision Plan as an investment in community health and believes that implementing this visionary plan has the potential to substantially impact the health of our region. This is a step that isn't just good policy today. It's got great promise to reduce future health care costs and increase the well-being of our communities. Now, Colorado is still the leanest state in the country, but we're losing ground. Over the last 15 years, the proportion of Colorado adults who are obese has more than doubled, and we recently lost our top ranking for physical activity. The evidence shows us that physical activity is one of the most important things people in communities can do to improve and maintain their health. An active lifestyle promotes healthy weight and reduces the risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Of great relevance to the Metro Vision Plan, as I know you are aware, the evidence indicates that the built environment, the way we design and build our communities, can really have a positive impact on health. For example, folks who live in neighborhoods with sidewalks on streets are 47% more likely to be active the 30 minutes a day recommended by the CDC Centers for Disease Control. Pedestrian injuries from crashes are far less likely in places with sidewalks, and streets with sidewalks on both sides have even lower rates. And finally, healthy aging in place in the community is unequivocally enhanced by walkability. As community leaders of our region, you can help build healthy communities that create opportunities for our residents to lead healthy lives. And on behalf of the partnership, we ask you to ensure that every resident in our community in the region has a fair chance to lead a healthy life, regardless of which community they lead in. Thank you very much for your time and your support of the Metro Vision Plan.
Thank you. Next up is Mike Salisbury.
Good Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Mike Salisbury. I represent the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. I want to just thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First of all, I'd just like to thank the board, MetroVision Issues Committee, DRCOG staff, and other stakeholders who contributed to all the hard work that's put into this document. I know it's been a long process, but I believe it's produced a true vision for the region that gives DRCOG and its participating local governments a guide to creating a viable and more sustainable region. MetroVision is a great example of the region being greater than some of its parts. Working together through DRCOG, the region is able to achieve more than the communities separately. Traffic, pollution, and new development impact all of the region's communities regardless where they start. As the document, I think, very straightforwardly states, the plan lays out how to make life better for the region's residents. This is accomplished by cleaning up the air we breathe, giving people better transportation options, making places easier for pedestrians and cyclists to access, among other outcomes that are discussed. This MetroVision recognizes the challenges that the region growing and changing as quickly as ours faces and provides the framework to make sure we grow sustainably. The performance measures listed in MetroVision provide quantifiable metrics that we can all use to make sure we're on track to achieving the desired outcomes. As MetroVision is formally adopted, I urge the board to begin considering how the tenets of MetroVision will be incorporated into the funding decisions that are made by DRCOG. The Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, is one of the main vehicles by which DRCOG provides funding for transportation projects around the region. The policies that guide the TIP project selection process are critical to ensuring that the region will be able to achieve the outcomes laid out in MetroVision. Past TIPs have made an effort to incorporate the outcomes of MetroVision into the selection criteria used to score TIP projects that are submitted. So, for example, a project that was shown to reduce vehicle travel or improve air quality might be eligible for additional points. Over the last year, there's been a very much ongoing process to review and recommend changes to the TIP program. While this process is still ongoing, it is possible it will result in significant changes to how funding is distributed in the region. The new TIP may look different from past TIPs. With that in mind, and regardless of the form the TIP takes, I urge the board and all relevant stakeholders to ensure that all the hard work that has gone into MetroVision is incorporated into the transportation funding decisions that the region makes for its future. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Next we have Kent Moorman.
Thank you. I'm Kent Moorman, 9500 Civic Center Drive, Thornton, Colorado, City of Thornton. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide input on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. Please accept the City of Thornton's comments on the draft 2040 MetroVision Plan. I will highlight the areas of the letter and provide the full letter that was sent earlier to DRCOG after this. The major policy concern the city has with the 2040 MetroVision Plan is that it continues to focus on urban centers. The policies, plans, and most importantly, federal funding that comes out of the 2040 MetroVision Plan will continue to focus on urban centers to the detriment of suburban communities such as Thornton. While we appreciate the importance and usefulness of urban centers in promoting development patterns and multimodal corridors connecting urban centers, the plan should be about targeting jobs, transportation, and housing improvement where people live and not just urban centers. The document's focus on urban centers needs to be broadened to encompass housing and employment going to locations throughout the DRCOG area that are well situated and have opportunity to provide well-planned mixed-use communities in the suburbs and not just along major interstate corridors. In the suburbs, the opportunity to densify is at a much smaller scale than in more urban areas. The development of smaller centers within the suburban community is still important for a variety of reasons, including helping the overall goal of MetroVision. Unfortunately, this is not recognized, and so the urban centers receive the recognition and therefore the resources. While we appreciate DRCOG's vision to promote development patterns that promote urban centers and multimodal corridors to accommodate a growing share of the region's housing and employment, it appears to be at the expense of promoting good development patterns and multimodal connections in the suburban surrounding the core city. MetroVision needs to be focusing on the region's housing and employment being located in location-efficient places, including urban centers, high opportunity areas, and areas well served by transit as opposed to just urban centers. While MetroVision touts the advancements of expanding regional mobility through fast tracks, the document fails to provide and state that it is not yet completed. This document also implies that every part of DRCOG has equal access to bus service. The majority of the city of Thornton is not served by transit, and therefore it does not seem to be any recognition of this or suggestion, and this needs to be addressed. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide input.
Thank you. Next, we have Brad Weinig.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brad Weinig. I'm here representing Mile High Connects. And on behalf of Mile High Connects, thanks to all of you for the opportunity to comment on MetroVision 2040. Mile High Connects is a broad partnership of organizations from the private, public, and nonprofit sectors committed to increasing access to housing choices, good jobs, quality schools, and essential services through accessibility to and use of public transit. Our mission is to ensure Metro Denver Regional Transit System fosters communities that offer all residents the opportunity for a high quality of life. Mile High Connect staff and our many member organizations have been deeply engaged with DRCOG and the MetroVision update process. We provided funding to support the successful Sustainable Communities Initiative grant application and matching dollars for its implementation. Multiple Mile High Connects members served on both the executive and coordinating committees for the Sustainable Communities Initiative, as well as the MetroVision Planning and Advisory Committee. We also continue to partner ongoing with DRCOG on data efforts like the Regional Equity Atlas and the Denver Project Pipeline. Because of our involvement in this process, Mile High Connects is well aware of the collective hours by DRCOG staff, board, and stakeholders that went into creating the updated MetroVision draft. Overall, Mile High Connects commends DRCOG for making great strides in improving the overall quality of the plan by incorporating themes, outcomes, and objectives relating to the community health, housing affordability, and diversity and inclusiveness. These are difficult challenges to address, particularly across a multitude of jurisdictions as diverse as those represented in this room. We maintain that DRCOG has a critical role to play in setting regional expectations and goals around equitable access to opportunity, and we will continue to push on regional planning efforts to ensure they continually make progress in this regard. Our primary concerns do not relate to the content of MetroVision plan, but in its implementation and influencing and allocating resources. We continue to see a disconnect between the values and goals outlined in MetroVision and the processes and procedures established by the DRCOG board for evaluating applications for transportation and planning funds. As an example, the 2016 to 2021 TIP policy document, the scoring criteria under any given category allocates a maximum of 25 points out of 100 for MetroVision alignment, and even those points are more specific to geography and less to do with the fulfillment of the overall regional plan laid out in MetroVision. We strongly urge the DRCOG board to honor the robust and detailed process undertaken to establish this MetroVision 2040 draft by aligning funding and investment decisions directly with the goals of MetroVision. In evaluating and awarding funds, DRCOG should incentivize member jurisdictions to provide evidence of commitment to achieving the laudable outcomes and objectives of MetroVision 2040. This can be accomplished by directly aligning competitive funding criteria with those outcomes and objectives. DRCOG is in a unique position as the Metropolitan Planning Organization to move its member jurisdictions toward achievement of a regional vision, but that grand vision will only be realized if DRCOG chooses to use its most valuable resources, transportation funding, to incentivize member jurisdictions' alignment with MetroVision 2040. So on behalf of Mile High Connects, again, thank you for this opportunity, and we hope you consider our comments in this regard.
Thank you. And then we have Jennifer Gushdow from Centennial. My apologies if I mispronounced your name there.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Getcho, and I am with the City of Centennial here on behalf of our staff. I am here just to reiterate our concerns in the letter that was submitted on November 10th, 2016 by our Assistant City Manager, Andrew Firestein. In the letter, we are asking that DRCOG do either one of two things. Either eliminate the references to the UGBA, Urban Growth Boundary Area, in the MetroVision Public Review Draft, or postpone the adoption of the Vision Plan until such time that the Urban Growth Boundary Area system has been reviewed by staff from DRCOG and its member governments, and any changes to the system are adopted by the DRCOG board. This concern comes from the fact that there are linkages between the urban growth boundary and the MetroVision draft plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us on this who hasn't signed up or spoken already? All right, then. This brings tonight's public hearing to a close. Thank you for your testimony and for your interest. The board is scheduled to take action, as Brad pointed out. It looks like because of the volume of comments that we received in the last 24 hours that we're not going to be able to get that all compiled for our December 7th board meeting. So look to get the analysis from staff of all the comments we've received at the January work session. And then we'll look to bring this up for hopefully adoption at the board meeting in January. And I want to underscore the importance of both of those meetings. We've been working on this for over a year and a half. We're near the finish line. We actually have to carry it across and finish this. And I would like to do it before I'm done being a board chair, if that's at all possible. But really, at the work session is where we'll really go through the comments in detail. So I really would encourage people, is that January 4th? So it's right in the new year, so mark your calendars. Is there any more the staff wanted to add on that? Good enough. Which takes me to,
Madam Chair, just had a process question. So to staff, so would you go through these then and then do a kind of letter by letter analysis of recommended changes? That how are you going to analyze these and how are you going to bring those back to us?
Well, it's a very good question. You know, we had a hallway discussion earlier today about exactly how we're going to handle this, and quite frankly, we're planning on sitting down tomorrow to actually address exactly that. We've done it a number of ways through the years, and I think there appears to be some themes throughout the comments that we might be able to address collectively, whereas there are others which we'll address one by one. But I would respectfully ask that you give us some latitude in that regard, so we can get together and figure that out.
It may take you a little while.
Yeah, I know it. That's why we're looking at January.
Okay, thank you.
And just quickly, since Director Brockett gave me an opening, I failed to mention what was provided to you is every comment we received, except we got one set late in today. There were actually comments on the PDF, and it was just impossible to pull it out or whatever. So you will. It's the only thing that's missing. That again you will see again as the chair mentioned for the January work session. So there was one thing that came in on time, but we didn't have enough time to get it in front of you this evening. So.
any other questions? Director Millay.
Who were those comments from?
They were from RTD.
Troublemakers.
All right. Then moving on to my report, the RTC did not meet, so that will go quickly. I want to bring your attention to a handout at your seat. It is time to think about all the great work that your communities have done and all the great people that have been promoting regionalism, and nominate them for awards so that they can be properly recognized in April. For any newcomers, the DRCOG Awards Gala is a great opportunity to celebrate great things that are happening in our region. It's going to be on April 26, 2017. And there's Metro Vision Awards, where you can nominate projects that your community or other communities have done that really exemplify the goals of Metro Vision. And then the creme de la creme is the John V. Christensen Memorial Award, which is the top award that DRCOG gives out to a leader who has often, but not always, sat at the DRCOG table, but really promotes regionalism. And I think in the packet there's a list of all of the past awardees. Our most recent one was Jack Hilbert and Will Tour, Kathy Novak, Jim Taylor, so other folks that I'm sure you know. So as I think tomorrow morning you'll be able to go online on the DRCOG website and see and submit online nominations. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Director Atchison to talk about anything his committee's working on.
Well, from performance engagement, we finished one task at our last meeting. We have finalized a revision to the executive director's performance evaluation. That'll be coming out with our piece. Oh, God, I'm trying to remember everything we did. Doug? We have started work on a couple of other pieces. As you recall, we had the safety briefing here by the attorney and the group here last meeting. And we have started to do the outline for that. That is a piece that will go on for several months. Won't be finished this year. We will continue to discuss that piece. This nomination piece that the chair just went through, because of the workload we currently have on P&E, I spoke with the chair of Budget and Finance and asked if they would take on this time the recommendation and moving forward with this recommendation on the award. So they will be covering that for us due to the workload that we currently have, and they have pretty well wrapped up most of their work. So we're trying to share in the wealth. That way, if somebody's unhappy about the selection, you can blame the Finance and Budget group and not the P&E group. So we will pick that back up again next year. But I think our biggest pieces right now are moving through a couple of new policy setups, primarily our safety piece that we've been briefed on. That's going to take some time. We're working with our entire committee, the staff here, our board attorney is giving us some input, plus we have some expertise that have been in and given us some updates, so that'll continue for a while. So from the P&E group, that's probably about it, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks. And Director Dyack is filling in for Director Pfeiffer to talk about finance and budget. Is there anything you want to add? I know you're going to talk about the budget in a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. What we did, it was a very efficient meeting, as Director Atchison alluded to. We sort of wrapped up our stuff with the budget last month. So our meeting earlier this afternoon was selecting a member of the nominating committee. That'll be Director Roger Partridge from Finance and Budget. And we opened the process to solicit nominations for the John V. Christensen Memorial Award. I've been told a link will be up tomorrow on the DRCOG website. So if you have anybody, please feel free to nominate them. And that is all, Madam Chair.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick thing I did forget. From the P&E group on the nominating committee, Director Rakowski will be representing our group, and we have forwarded 2 other recommendations to the chair for consideration. More
on that later. All right, so I think it's your report, Doug.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I have three things I want to talk to you about. The first is the Transportation Improvement Program, and I bring this up with some trepidation because I know everybody's blood pressure just starts to rise whenever they hear that. And those for the new board members that we have that are not familiar with the Transportation Improvement Program or the TIP. It's a list of projects, list of upcoming projects that we're federally required to produce in order to be eligible for federal funding. So, and traditionally, at least in recent history, we've adopted the TIP every 4 years, and we've done our call for projects, for the DRCOG funding that we have every 4 years as well. We're adjusting the schedule a little bit in order to accommodate some of the process stuff that CDOT's doing. We're going to be doing a TIP every 2 years. However, it's primarily just an administrative exercise from us because we will continue. We won't be adding additional projects to this new TIP. The projects that were adopted a couple years ago, those will roll into this new TIP. It's just an opportunity for CDOT to put projects in because a year drops off and a new year is added, so they'll be able to add some additional pool projects and the like within those, so it will be eligible for use for them. So I probably just confused everybody, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that in the new year you're going to be asked for the adoption of this new transportation improvement program. But from our perspective, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference with regards to our local projects. We're still going to be doing a call for our next call for projects will not occur until the summer of 2018. So just kind of FYI. There'll be more on that. Don't worry. I had an opportunity yesterday to attend a Douglas County State of the County yesterday morning, and the focus of the event was on public-private nonprofit partnerships. Partnerships with DRCOG was certainly highlighted, particularly in the multimodal transportation goal and the community services goal, which primarily has to do with DRCOG's AAA work in Douglas County. I thought it was a fantastic event, Roger, and thank you very much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. DRCOG Open House. Over the last couple of years, we've had open houses around basically right after our December board meeting. This year, because the holiday season is so as hectic as it is, we're moving that open house to February 1st. And those who have not participated in this, I would strongly encourage you to do so. But it's an opportunity for you to go upstairs and see the mystery. That's the 7th floor. I know not many people get a chance to get up there, but it's an opportunity for you to meet staff that you don't regularly see, and talk about new projects that we have upcoming, and there will be food. So there's that. So I would strongly encourage you, and we will be sending out an email here sometime relatively soon to get that on your calendars.
Is that after the work session?
It is after the work session. It's after the work session on February 1st. Yeah. Cool. Last but not least, well, I'm sure we'll mention this a number of times this evening, but just remember that the December meeting has been moved to December 7th, and it will occur at our regular work session time of 4 o'clock. So the regular board meeting will occur at 4 o'clock on December 7th. And we are anticipating that our two subcommittees we have, the Performance and Engagement Committee and the Finance and Budget Committee, will also meet on that same night immediately following the conclusion of the board meeting. Okay, so it's going to be a little late night for you all, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that. That's it for me.
Thanks, Doug. Next, we'll move on to public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to us for 3 minutes on an item that hasn't been subject to a prior public hearing, do we have any takers? Seeing none, then we'll move on to our consent agenda, which includes the minutes from October 19th. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to our action items, which begin with the DRCOG 2017 budget. I'm going to ask Director Dyack to introduce that item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we indicated earlier, Finance and Budget concluded their 2-month process of budget review. We would like to thank staff for their efforts in preparing the budget. The committee had a full and frank discussion involving all members. Staff addressed all questions and concerns of the committee, and in talking with Committee Chair Pfeiffer, we were very pleased with the level of scrutiny that the committee gave the budget. So with that, we wholeheartedly give the budget for discussion to the full board, and hope staff will provide a brief presentation.
Great. Thanks, Jenny.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Dock, the accounting manager. And yeah, for those of you who aren't aware of the full process, we actually, I'm hitting some keys here. We actually start the process, staff does, way back in June, so it's a long process for us. We typically work on our annual strategic plan and link that up with the budget. Back in August, we actually took the strategic plan to the board workshop and welcomed comments and review at that time. And then the budget being linked to those initiatives went to the Finance and Budget Committee in September and in October. So it's a lengthy process, but we take it seriously. A couple of things that I'm just going to highlight that are not listed in the director's letter, which actually gives a very good summary that I think would be of interest to the board. That this year we have an overall budget decrease of $572,000. Or 3.25% for 2016. So we are trying to watch expenses and also be mindful of match requirements. The decrease in match dollars and DRCOG funded programs is down $204,000 this year from last year, or 11%. And then we also have a decrease in 50% of the overall drawdown in the general fund. And if you remember discussions from last year, we really talked about wanting to be mindful of our general fund and saving as many dollars as we can. Our auditors continually recognize that it's important for us to maintain about a 3-month supply of expenses in our general fund. So we've been mindful of that as well. So all of that comes together to where we have an overall budget where we see that decrease of $572,000. So those are the highlights, as well as what's listed in the director's, executive director's budget letter. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Any questions for Jenny? It is true that the committee did some great work on the budget, so we should feel good about that. I'm not seeing any questions, so Director Partridge.
Jenny, thank you very much. And comment, maybe a question too, and maybe have HR come up to address it. I think one of the biggest things you always have with a budget is FTEs. And it was when we look at last year and this year, there was some significant FTEs, but staff did a great job explaining it. And Jenny, would you mind addressing that? Because certainly some of the things we look at with the FTEs is saying, how do you handle the increased workload instead of just hiring? I think you really went through the gauntlet, I always like to call it. You looked at technology, job sharing, contracting out, or part-time, and I think staff did a wonderful job. But I think it's worth mentioning what happened last year, why you did not fill all those FTEs, and why there's that request this year.
Sure. So we're always mindful of staffing levels and trying to explore not only the traditional methods of hiring people when we get more work, but also looking at contract employees and also contract labor when it's needed, entering into consulting contracts and such. For instance, when we took on the SCI grant, some of those positions were hired as positions only for that grant, recognizing that when that project was over, that most likely those positions would go away. So we're always mindful of that, also mindful of in our aging program with the Older Americans Act funding, making sure that we have adequate staffing levels, but that we keep in mind that we know those levels or the funding levels could change from year to year. So it's always at the top of staff's mind to be mindful of those changing environments and ensuring that we're hiring appropriately and strategically in the places that we need it most at the times when it's absolutely necessary. Does that answer your question?
Other questions? Director
This might
Jefferson?
be a relatively inconsequential question but talk to me a little bit about the in-kind services and how we're accounting for that. I notice they always kind of match the expenditures with the revenues every year, so it's probably not a big deal, but just for my own information, what's going on there?
Sure. So a lot of our in-kind is actually coming from RTD on our UPWP grant. The match that we have to provide for that is split by DRCOG cash and then RTD in kind. So that's that number that you're seeing there. A majority of that would be that RTD in kind match there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. We have a motion to approve the budget, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and thanks to the Finance and Budget Committee for their good work.
Thanks.
All right, next we move on to selecting a member for the Nominating Committee. As you all know, the Nominating Committee will be seated this month, and the task will be to recommend a slate of officers, board officers, that the full board will consider in the new year, and they would be seated in February of 2017. And you may recall from our governance committee work that we updated how we select a nominating committee, and that there will be 6 members for the nominating committee. That will include the past chair, a representative from Denver, a representative from the Finance and Budget Committee, a representative from the Performance and Engagement Committee, a representative of the full board, and then a representative chosen by the chair. And some of the rules around that: you have to have served on the DRCOG board for a year. Alternates are not eligible to serve. And if you want to be a board officer, you cannot serve on the nominating committee. That kind of follows. So, and where we are to date is that we have a past chair, and that's Director Millay from Lone Tree. The representative from Denver is going to be Robin Kinich. I believe I have that correct. And as Director Atchison pointed out, the Performance and Engagement Committee already selected their member, and that was Director Rakowski from Greenwood Village. And then, just moments ago, in Finance and Budget, we chose Roger Partridge from Douglas County to be that committee's representative. So we have 4 members chosen, and we have 2 more to select. One will be by the full board, and then I'll back cleanup. The nominating committee, as you all know, is an important committee because it really chooses the leadership, or it doesn't choose, it recommends the leadership and the full board decides. But we need to be mindful of community size, geography, city, county. So we have 4 that you're already aware of that are on the board, and then we need to choose the final 2 slots. The people who have expressed an interest so far, who aren't already on the nominating committee, are Colleen Whitlow, Saoirse Charis-Graves, Shakti, George Teal, and Don Rozier. And this is your opportunity to pull out if for some reason somebody put your name on there by accident. And it's also the opportunity for other people to nominate themselves or others who qualify to serve on the nominating committee. Do we have any takers? Oh, Kyle? Oh, Director Mulliken. I'm sorry, could you use your microphone?
I just said to have a little Adams County representation.
So you're nominating yourself? Sorry, I was a little slow on that one. And he's eligible, is he? Is he eligible? Okay. And we're just checking to make sure you've served for a year. So, are there any other folks that want to put their names in the hat? All right, so then we're going to hand out cards. Everybody gets 1 vote. Then I'm going to read off your choices again. So Colleen Whitlow, Saoirse Charis-Graves, so Colleen from Meade, Saoirse from Golden, Shakti from Lakewood, George Teal from Castle Rock, Don Rozier from Jeffco, and then Kyle Mullica from North Glen. So so the request was for the people that have their are interested in serving on the nominating committee, will you stand so that people have a visual image of who they're voting for?
Based on looks here.
And Don's the only one that's not here?
Say it again?
Commissioner Rozier's the only person who's not here?
And Saoirse is not. So, and again, the people that were already on the committee, Jackie Millay, Robin Kinich, Roger Partridge, and Ron Rakowski.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Is the person selected just whoever gets the largest quantity of votes? There's
For the
no-
board position, yes, and the chair.
Well, as opposed to dropping off the lowest one, re-voting, you can do all kinds of elaborate voting mechanisms.
We were going to keep it simple.
Okay, great. Great.
So has everybody had a chance to vote?
How about you? Oh, okay.
Okay, we're going to give Connie a few moments to tally the votes, and we're going to keep moving on through the agenda. So we are at the Express Lanes transition from HOV 2 to HOV 3, and I think we have Megan Castle, from the High Performance Tolling Enterprise, who's going to give us a presentation on that.
So just use these arrows right here. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk about the changes that are coming up on Colorado's US 36 and I-25 express lanes. I will first just give an overview. This slide is going to talk about where are the express lanes, and I can say in less than the past 18 months, we've opened up 3 corridors. So on US 36, another segment on I-25, and then the Mountain Express lane. So things have been very busy, and this is a regional map that also shows where some potentially new express lanes will be, and some coming soon on North I-25 and C-470. So I want to apologize. This slide did not come through. It had a wonderful heat map to show this. Instead, nobody can really see this small little graph here. But our executive director has used this graph. It's been used in a lot of media. The purpose of this graph is to talk about that express lanes actually work. So a lot of people just wonder, is this something that it only benefits you if you are actually using the lane? But it is, we're seeing data over and over again that it's helping all lanes move faster. So for example, on US 36, during peak rush hour times of morning and afternoon, we compared we compared times before construction and then after construction of the express lanes, and speeds were 20 to 29% faster during express lane, or using the express lanes. So that makes the big difference if you're able to go 10 miles faster in your commute. And on our Mountain Express lane, we're seeing record traffic moving. There aren't the backups that happen and that stop traffic for the entire day. We're able to move those backups and get people going. And if anybody is being in the mountains, and a lot of people move here for that access, this is getting people back home faster and less time in their cars. So this slide shows you the switchable HOV transponder. So I actually brought one, but I don't have it with me right here. So if anybody wants to see one, and if you don't have them, I'll get it to you. Over 113,000 of these have been distributed to date. So that started just in May of 2015. So people are getting these passes. They understand how to use them. The importance of these is that you need these, or a driver needs these, if they want to carpool for free. And it also allows you to toll. So if you want to use it on toll road like E470 or the Mountain Express lane, it gives you options and choice. So what's happening? So coming January 1st on 2017, we are going to be changing the requirements on HOV 3. So on the express lanes that offer HOV, and that is US 36 express lanes and the I-25 express lanes, that means it'll be driver plus 2, so or 3. But it's a minimum of driver plus 2 on these 2 corridors. And so it's happening January 1st, and why is this happening? Well, the 2 main reasons that it's happening: we want to ensure trip reliability, so for the people who are paying to be in there, or if they have the right people, a number of people to carpool, that they get that trip reliability. And also for RTD, we have a contractual obligation that we are able to provide reliable travel times and meet those speeds for RTD and their transit. And these express lanes are becoming very popular. And the second reason is obviously financials. So the toll revenue that is collected is going to help offset the cost for this transportation infrastructure and the ongoing operations and maintenance costs. So again, this decision this will happen on January 1st. So the decision was made nearly 4 years ago. CDOT's Transportation Commission voted to approve this, and then also DRCOG in early 2013 has approved this too for HOV 3 change on these corridors. So CDOT wants to help because we know that this is going to be a difficult change for people. So here's some examples of things that are going to be happening. So where there is the HOV on 25 and 36 express lanes, motorcycles previously could always travel for free. However, they needed to have an express toll account and pass, so they weren't billed for it. They are now able to use the lanes, these HOV lanes, and only those lanes, not E470 or Northwest Parkway or the Mountain Express lane. They can use them for free without a pass. If they do go on the other express lanes or toll roads, then they're going to be paying. And let's see, the other things that we've done are, we call them purists, carpool or HOV purists. Starting in spring 2017, these folks will be able to get that switchable transponder for free. So currently it does cost $15. And we are working with our back office partners at Express Toll to make sure that these changes will be implemented. We were able to get the motorcycle changes implemented a little bit faster. That happened in October, and these upcoming changes will happen in the spring. So this is a great illustration of the complexity around the transponders and reimbursements and passes and cutting through all of this information to just the general public. So what happened is that we provided a $15 rebate to the people who are already these carpool purists or HOV purists, and they received a gift card. There were 7,003 of them that received this. So we determined that universe as of September 11th. In the spring, the other people who are carpool purists and that haven't received their reimbursement will be able to call and get those funds returned to them. So there's options for travelers. CDOT's all about choice. We want to make sure that express lanes we're offering choices. So what can travelers do with this change? Well, they can find a third carpooler to use the HOV express lane. They can find or form a new way-to-go van pool. They can use the free general purpose lanes because they are always there. They can ride the bus or pay a toll. And then I wanted to talk about the public outreach. So what are we doing to inform the public, because this is a very complicated and big effort here. So the public outreach, we're really focusing on no surprises. What you're seeing here is just a little teaser of some of the paid advertising campaign that's going to start. And you may have seen this goose theme that was used when we launched US 36, and it was brought back around I-25. So our campaigns, we're going to be on buses, billboards, TV, radio, and again, it's no surprises. Some of the other things that we're doing, obviously, we are using a mix of paid media, grassroots and earned or traditional media. So we're also using CDOT's VMS signs. And so for those of you who travel that corridor, you may have seen that we've started that messaging already to say that HOV3 will begin January 1st. And some of the other things that we're doing, we've reached out to the corridor PIOs, we've held meetings, we've provided them materials, we're going to city council meetings, we're going to Rotary meetings, we're in HOA newsletters, we are wherever we can be with this. So what else are we doing? So one of the things that has really helped move this along is that we have formed an HOV3 education task force. So up here is a list of all the partners that are involved in this. So CDOT wants to make sure that people have all the options that they are available to them as far as making this change from HOV2 to 3. And this is in we want to leverage all of our partners. So from DRCOG, RTD, on the corridors, 36 Commuting Solutions, and Smart Commute Metro North. These people are providing incentives. They're getting people out of their single occupancy. They're helping them find out how to use a van pool or maybe how to try transit for the first time. And we are going to be launching a website, or actually we have a website on our Express Lanes page that is a landing. It has all the incentives that our different partners are providing. Some of these are fully announced and some are still being developed, so you'll see more information come along. And then also I just wanted to really thank the folks here at DRCOG and Steve Erickson. He's been very helpful in working in this education task force, pulling together people, very strong, innovative ideas, and helping to make sure that the ride program is able to accommodate for 3 riders, whereas carpools have been 2. I don't know if I'm stealing any of his thunder, but we'll be looking at wrapping some vans to announce this that will be traveling on the corridor, so commuters are going to be seeing this every day. Some really great ideas, and just other outreach to go into some of the employer areas and talk to them about this, using coffee carts and some incentives for employers to learn how to commute, get out of their car. And again, all of this is going to be on the Express Lanes website, and then we're going to drive people back to each of the partners so they can go and find out what solutions work for them. And just as I've come here tonight to talk to you all and take questions, if there's folks that if you would like us to come and talk to your community, or if you'd like some information, please feel free to contact us. And with that, I will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sharp.
Megan, thank you. I just had a question on enforcement. Who's going to do enforcement?
So enforcement is by Colorado State Patrol and other municipalities that are involved in this along the corridor. And you're talking about the HOV enforcement, is that correct?
Yes, if somebody's 2 people and it's not 3, because I think that is a concern. Sometimes you can't see people who are in the back seat, and you know how many people there are, and so just wondered who actually was going to do enforcement, and if you'll be keeping track of
Well, the method of
the numbers
enforcement
and the cost to doing that.
The enforcement is not going to change that method. It's currently with law enforcement. They receive a signal that says that that transponder is in HOV mode, and then they do a visual count. And so law enforcement is responsible for handling that. And it's up to a $250 fine.
Other questions? Director Flynn.
Thank you, Megan. What is the enforcement statistics currently with HOV2? Do we know how often people are stopped and ticketed?
You know, I don't have that information. We could get it.
I'd love to know that at some future point. Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you so very much. Next, we have our state legislative issues and draft state legislative policy from Rich Morrow. There you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we are on attachment G. Is that right?
Yep.
I'm not sure what number it is electronically, but so members, every year around this time, come to you with the state legislative policy statement, which we've been doing for many, many years, intended to have the board on record on certain policies that help give me and our DRCOG lobbyists direction as we represent you down at the Capitol. Of course, starting in January, when we see bills get introduced, we will bring bills to you for your consideration and action, so you can expect at the first board meeting in January, I presume, if follow past trends, a lot of bills to look at. Today, we are not recommending any changes to the previous policy statement, but we're still not asking for your action. Typically, we present it to the board and then put it back on the next agenda, the next month's agenda for your action. So I would just ask if you have a chance to look at it, or staff look at it, if there's any questions or comments, to please get back to me as soon as possible before the December 7th meeting, so we have a chance to address those. But it will be back in December 7th for your consideration and action. And then see if there's any questions about that, and then we have one other piece on this item.
Any questions for Rich? Director Mullica.
Just looking at the policies, what are we looking at for housing growth and development? What's DRCOG looking at doing that?
You mean in terms of possible legislation?
Yes.
That could be a good segue to the next part of this. So we were also asked to give a probably brief overview or preview of issues leading into the legislative session, which begins, Ed'll tell me it's January 11th. So I've asked Ed Bowditch, one of your lobbyists, to come and talk to us a little bit about some of the changes in the legislature from the election and issues regarding the budget, and then I'll wrap up with some of the other issues, including housing, that we're looking at.
Thank
Great,
you, Rich.
thanks.
Madam Chair. Again, Ed Bowditch, lobbyist for DRCOG. The elections last week, we were all watching them at the state level, certainly. The elections, going into the elections, the Senate was controlled by the Republicans 18-17. And coming out of the elections, the Senate is controlled by the Republicans 18-17. It's a slightly different mix. There were a couple of changes, but that will continue. The House was controlled by the Democrats 34-31, and that margin got bigger. The House is still controlled by the Democrats, but 37-28. Split chambers can lead to a lot of things. I will disagree with the Denver Post when they said split chambers leads to gridlock. The legislature passed 500 bills last year. They were not all license plate bills. There was a lot of substantive legislation that got through last year, which is a real testimony to the legislative leadership and the leadership of the executive branch working together to make sure that many of the important issues were addressed. There are two key new leaders, the new Senate President, Senator Kevin Grantham, whose district goes from Canyon City through Park County, but also includes Clear Creek County, part of our catchment area. Representative Crisanta Duran will be the Speaker of the House. She's from Denver. The Legislative Joint Budget Committee has 4 returning members, 2 new members. That will continue with a 3-3 split, Republicans and Democrats. We are waiting to see the selection and designation of committee chairs. In terms of the budget, on November 1st, the governor submitted his FY 17-18 budget request. This is the first public unveiling of the budget process for the fiscal year that begins next July 1st. The governor very clearly identified that he believed there's a $500 million gap between what statute requires and the available revenue. The governor sees a requirement of $926 million in new expenditures against an available revenue stream, an increase in available general fund of $426 million. So a $500 million gap. By law, the governor's budget has to balance the recommendations. So the governor made a number of recommendations to reduce that gap, including capping the fees on the hospital provider fee. That's not changing it into a Tabor enterprise, but just capping the amount of money the state collects from the hospitals. That will get rid of the Tabor refund. Eliminating the statutory transfer to transportation. That eliminates a $164 million statutory transfer that is scheduled to occur this year. Also raising the negative factor in K-12 education by about $40 million. Transferring some other funds, and the governor's budget is balanced. A couple of highlights from the governor's budget. It's important to note that the governor's revenue estimate is balanced, but it is still $200 million higher than what the legislative economists see in terms of revenues that are coming in. One key issue that we will be watching, and we've already had a number of discussions on it, the senior homestead exemption that provides a tax relief for seniors who have lived in their homes for 10 years. That
program has been growing very rapidly in the last few years. The legislature has no control over that in the reimbursement to the counties. Late last year, the legislature talked about modifying that program. The legislature has the authority to zero out the program. That was put in the Constitution when the program went in 2000. The Joint Budget Committee has talked about modifying that program. That program came in for a $12 million increase. That's the projected amount that the state will have to reimburse the counties for additional senior homestead exemption tax relief. I anticipate that will get a lot more discussion as to possibly reforming that program. Finally, all of this is draft, really. We'll get the next revenue forecast on December 20th. The legislature goes in full on January 11th. Right now the Budget Committee is meeting. And then the March 20th revenue estimates are really the critical ones. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Any questions? I guess just to put a finer point on the Senate Bill 228 funds, what we've collected and what is likely to happen going forward. Can you give us those numbers again?
Yeah, the transfers to transportation last year during the final budget balancing period, part of the solution to close the gap was to cancel the transfers to transportation. They moved the statute out and they said they do the transfers this year. Again, with this year's budget gap, the $164 million that is projected right now by law to go to transportation, the governor is recommending eliminating that for this year. That requires a bill, would again have to pass those split chambers. That will probably not be decided until March, till we get those March revenue forecasts, and maybe somebody else will have a different priority, or maybe that bill will fail, and the transfer would then automatically happen.
And do they forecast beyond this fiscal year on what they think is going to happen?
I haven't seen any if they do. Yes.
Deborah?
So just as a point of clarification, it's my understanding that what the governor did was he actually halved the amount. And so it's $79 million for this year with $79 million for next year. And the direct allocation was supposed to be actually 158, and so he halved it to make his budget.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification.
Instead of zeroing it out. And part of that, I think, was the concern that some of that money was going to be used for I-25 North, just so people are aware and they're calm.
Yeah. I appreciate the clarification.
Thanks. Other questions?
So again, this has a long way to go. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So a couple other issues that I've been working on and we've been working on and anticipating for the session. So Director Malika had a question about housing issues. I've been in some meetings of groups that have talked about various affordable housing concerns. A lot of what's been talked about is similar to what was proposed at the end of last session. But most of what I'm hearing at this point is not a lot of expectation of anything happening. I think there's no sense with even the changes within the legislature that there have been enough changes to make any progress on the construction defects issue. And then with the budgetary problems, some of the other types of programs that would take additional funding, there's just not going to be much money for those. I think I did see, going back on the governor's budget, that there was, I think, about $18 million in the governor's budget of, I believe it was some marijuana money that was above what they had projected, but I could clarify that as well. That would go to DOLA. But other than that, there could still be bills that get introduced, but what I'm hearing right now is not a lot of optimism that much of anything will happen. Ed, I don't know if you've had the same.
I agree. The larger issue of construction defects is not lining up to change much.
Right. Yeah. And so then a couple of other transportation issues, or one really. The Transportation Legislation Review Committee, which is an interim committee that meets during the summer, did recommend two bills. One, which was essentially the Trans 2 type bill that was introduced and failed at the end of last session, was passed out of that committee, but it also has to, all these interim committee bills also has to pass through the Legislative Council, which is basically the leadership, and that died on a tie vote. So that did not get passed out as a committee bill. So if somebody wants to introduce it, it'll have to be one of their 5 bills. But there was another bill that the TLRC recommended that did get approved, and it's similar to the issue that DRCOG was involved in last year on Representative
Terry
Carver from Colorado Springs area, wanting the CDOT really, and maybe potentially with help from MPOs and TPRs, to hold hearings around the state on transportation issues and needs and priorities. I think the bill that finally passed out of the committee had the TLRC scheduling those hearings, but however it gets structured, it's still going to cost some money, so I don't know if they're going to really be able to make money available for that bill ultimately, but it will be something that will follow in the legislature. Couple of others real quick, all on aging issues. So on the, Ed mentioned the senior property tax exemption. I've kind of called together a group of stakeholders, if you will, or advocates on senior issues to start talking about some of the options or alternatives for that, so that we're in a good position to inform the legislature and the Joint Budget Committee as they discuss what to do with that. So I'll be reporting back to you if they do recommend any changes to that, and be happy to answer any questions about it if anybody has. The other aging bill that we've been spending a lot of time on and may end up being one of the lead organizations on is a PACE ombudsman. So I'll try to do this real quick and simple. It can get confusing, but so there's a program actually in healthcare policy and financing that's called the Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, and it's essentially an alternative to provide services to individuals to help them remain in their homes and in the community rather than having to go to a nursing home or assisted living. The largest provider of those services is InnovAge, and you've probably seen their commercials on TV. They last year converted from a nonprofit to a for-profit, and the way these kinds of conversions work, you're required to get approval. In this case, they had to get approval from the Attorney General, and they have to basically give up a designated amount of money that translates to the benefits that they've had all these years from being a nonprofit and with their government contracts and so forth. So anyway, they agreed with the Attorney General to set up a foundation that I think is initially capitalized with $196 million that would give grants to community organizations and others that serve older adults in the highest need. The other issue, specific legislative issue that we worked on as part of that agreement, was saying if this program really needs to have an ombudsman program similar to what's in the long-term care area with nursing homes and assisted living, especially if it's going to be privately run. And the agreement that the AG agreed with InnovAge was simply to have create a single position in the State Department of Human Services for a state PACE ombudsman, and InnovAge agreed to fund it for 5 years. They had to run a bill to implement that in statute, but we also, with some other organizations, got involved in that bill because part of the discussions, and there was
mention in the AG's agreement that in addition to this one state ombudsman, that there should also be legislation that would create a full statewide ombudsman program similar to what we have with the long-term care area that includes local ombudsmen. So that's the real issue here is filling this out with local ombudsmen that can go to these facilities and clients. That was not specifically included in the bill that passed at the end of last session, but the bill did direct the department to do a stakeholder group during the summer to develop legislation to be introduced for the next legislative session, and our staff, Jayla and Shannon, our ombudsman supervisor, were on that committee. The department will report on that committee's work at their budget hearing before the JBC, but we're also working with members of that group on drafting that legislation, and probably we'll have to go get sponsors and so forth. So again, we'll be back reporting to you on that one.
Thanks, Rich.
And the only other thing I have is we don't know for sure yet, but the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging is supposed to be, it has to issue its final report and recommendations to the governor and the legislature and the Joint Budget Committee by November 30th, and I think they're having a press conference at the Capitol on November 29th to roll that out. So we don't know yet. They may have some specific recommendations, or there could be some legislation that comes out of that, and we'll be watching that as well. That's it.
Great. So any questions for Rich? Director Daigle.
When you said that you were going through the governor's report, one was to increase the negative fund for education, which I have issues with that, but it's okay. The other was the homestead exemption, capping the hospital fund, and what was the other one? Eliminating,
or I said eliminating, but I think it's lowering the amount of the statutory transfer to transportation.
oh, lowering.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. So our last informational briefing of the evening is Steve Cook talking about the happy topic of traffic crashes.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is these slides are in attachment H of your packet. And what we really wanted to do tonight was just give a introduction and summary of some of the key results from a report that we're going to be finalizing next month we'll be presenting to all of our committees. But we wanted to give you a kind of a quick introduction tonight. So this report is an update, will be an update to a safety report we had prepared back in 2011. And the key purposes when we do these traffic crash reports for the region are really to raise awareness on different types of traffic safety issues in the region, to stimulate ideas, actions that CDOT can implement, local governments can implement. And it's also a precursor to some federal performance targets that we will have to set next year. So we wanted to give you this introduction here. One element of the purpose that it is not the purpose of, it is not a purpose of this report to be a rigorous engineering analysis of any specific locations. That's really up to your public works staff, CDOT, agencies like that. And in your home communities, you have access to all the direct law enforcement reports, police reports, the accident and crash diagrams. So the detailed engineering work is really up to the engineers and public works folks. But we'll be happy to work with them on any of the large-scale regional level data that we have here. So the first subject area to touch on, which is probably the most critical one, is traffic fatalities. In the blue bars there represent the data on the left, which is the number of fatalities per year. The bad thing that happened between 2014 and 2015 is that the number of fatalities per year increased from 185 in the Denver region to 238. A dramatic increase. You can see the last set of bars there. It's one of the steepest increases in a long time. And so that's something that we'll definitely want to work on within your communities as a group, working with CDOT, extremely important. And that is one item that we will have to set a target for in terms of reduction, trying to reduce that. We'll have to set that target for U.S. Department of Transportation late next year. And we added this in because this is actually the way that Federal Highway Administration will be requiring us to present the data, not just in our yellow bars, which is every individual year, but they are asking us to present it, and CDOT also, from a statewide perspective, to present it as a 5-year rolling average. So even though in 2015 there were 238 fatalities, if you average it on the previous 5 years, it was actually 188. So that's a number that we would be reporting to the feds. So that is one key thing that we will be monitoring. The next level of information is on serious injuries and the injury crash rate. Approximately 1,850 serious injuries per year in the Denver region. Very, very high number. We definitely want to lower that one. And that also will have to be one of the established target goals that we set in the next year. So we've gone from fatalities to serious injuries, and then when we look at just total crashes in terms of reported crashes, any guesses on how many total crashes a year before I click the button on the slide in the Denver region? Kevin, I know you looked ahead. Well, a little under, about 65,000, which is about 200 crashes a day. And one thing we stress in the report is that these are only reported crashes. So we know that, you know, the estimate is there's probably double that amount or close to that in terms of ones that aren't reported, that are fender benders during snow season when you have your accident alert dates. You know, you're supposed to wait a little bit before you report some. We know that all of those don't ultimately get reported. So the key thing here of the impact, not only, you know, the cost to you in terms of repairing your vehicle, is on traffic congestion. We know that these crashes have dramatic impacts on traffic congestion. It adds to the unreliability of the system. I mean, we know that congestion is reliable. You know, that is one thing. Congestion is reliable, but it's when those really unreliable situations occur, when there's a crash that seems to be sitting there for hours. CDOT has been working really hard, and we're working with them on incident management planning, and they've done a couple of great new techniques and equipment. I know in the North Front Range area we saw a video on that of law enforcement and all the emergency personnel working together to clear the scene. There's some communities around the country are using drones now to go up and take quick visual pictures of the scene so you can clear everything and then get your measurements from the footage from the drone in terms of measuring skid marks and things like that. So a lot of things to try to improve on incident management in the next few years. Another thing that's noted that probably isn't a big surprise is in terms of, you know, the age of drivers who are involved in crashes and gender. But the real key thing there that's always jumped out is the young males really is, you know, a disproportionate when you compare it to the amount of miles that are driven by those age groups. It's just something that we need to continue to work on, and we know that CDOT's traffic safety program works hard on this, is we got to lower that number of crashes by young males. I've got 2 of them, so I watch them very closely, and hopefully they've learned from me. Another aspect in the report looks at the causes of traffic action in terms of like the action that the driver in the vehicle was doing at the time. Obvious one that jumps out, which is classified into on the crash forms, is careless driving, and many of these other things you could almost call careless type actions, but it really is lack of driver alertness. We know that that's, you know, really the key factor. Another aspect that's in in the report, and all of this data comes from statewide crash records that your local law enforcement initially submits these to the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue tabulates all the data, sends it to CDOT. CDOT sends it to us, and we do geographic coding of all of them so we can map them all. So a lot of these terminologies come from the actual crash records. Human factors, of course, with things related to distracted driving, aggressive driving, all these things we've heard about. These are really critical issues that we're facing across the region. Then the report will get into certain types of crashes, and we just got a couple examples here. One of the really important ones is pedestrian fatalities. We have a little over 40 fatalities in the area last year, some really high-profile, tragic incidents that have occurred across the region. As I mentioned, it's about 40 per year, but it represents over 20% of all the fatalities. So if you consider the amount of, exposure time that people are out there along the roads or crossing streets, it's a very disproportionate rate. And that's really because pedestrians are a lot more vulnerable. It's physics, it's math. When a 3,000-pound object is moving 20, 30, 40 miles an hour, it's going to have tragic impacts. In the report, there's several maps that we'll put in the report, really just to denote, how widespread some of these things are, like pedestrian crashes across the region. But then we also know there's concentrated areas where sometimes it's just simply more pedestrian activity. A block from here, there's a tragic fatality out here, right out our door, on a Saturday, I think it was a Saturday night 2 weeks ago, right on the corner here. Broadway and Colfax, places like that where there's just a lot of activity of all kinds. There's just so many things going on. We find that at the intersections, 62% pedestrian crashes at intersections. I mean, intersections is where there's just a lot of things going on. People are turning. You have to look left. You have to look right. You have to look behind you. If you're a pedestrian, there's just a lot of things going on there. Bicycle fatalities, generally around 6 to 8 per year. We want to lower this one. This one, obviously, too, a lot of vulnerability to people who are cycling. There's a little section in the report that'll be on truck-related crashes. Once again, the key here is really just to point out some of the unique attributes of crashes involving large trucks. There's just the aspect that more damage will be done, if you have a large truck that hits another vehicle. And then also the design and planning considerations in terms of the visual aspects of, how difficult it is for drivers of large trucks to be able to see, and you always see some of the signs and promotions from the CDOT traffic safety on, watch out for the blind zone of people who are driving, especially semi-rigs. Another map we have in there is looking at wildlife and vehicle collisions around the area. That's probably, of all the maps, and that's the one where things just stand out the most, pretty obviously. If you're 285 in the mountains, down I-25, and especially in southern Douglas County, along US 6 in Golden, where a couple of years ago they put in that special crossing there. We also note that US 36 north of Boulder has the wildlife protection zone where there's special types of mitigation efforts there. And CDOT is doing other ones around the state in terms of, especially in migration season, having a lower nighttime speed limit. And I think, one last slide. So just kind of I guess the top 3 things in terms of takeaways that we noted is just the number of fatalities that increased between 14 and 15. This year, I think we're on about the same pace as 15, about the same amount so far this year. We noted young male drivers and the disproportionality of their involvement in crashes. Pedestrians very vulnerable. I do want to note there's actually, CDOT actually has 2 calls for projects out right now. One is for their Highway Safety Improvement Program. Those are due November 30th, I believe, so I encourage local governments to apply for projects through that. And then they have another one through their traffic records section where they give out small grants to help communities do like e-citations and do help officers get automated GPS type crash reporting systems for their vehicles. And I know I looked at like the list of the last couple of years. I think Broomfield, Douglas County had gotten a grant in that. North Glen got a grant in that. Lone Tree got a grant, I think, for the e-citation. I think was the one that they got. So we encourage you to apply for things like that, and tell your staff, we're more than willing to work with them if they want to use this data that we have. Like I said, some of the detailed, specific data, your communities will probably have better stuff, but if it's more broad type mapping of data, we'd be happy to work with your staff. With that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Director Rakowski and then Shakti.
Steve, thank you very much. I find it very ironic that today is the 1-year anniversary of the tragic death of a young Colorado State Patrol trooper in Douglas County. I call it really a homicide by a DUI driver. To put a more fine point on this, a couple weeks ago we clocked in Greenwood Village on 25 2 motorcycles at 200 miles an hour, followed quickly by a Camaro at 118 miles an hour. Now you might say, well, why don't you do something? We've already had in the last year, 2 of our police cars totaled when they were on I-25 writing citations by inattentive drivers that were drunk. So I'm not going to put our police officers at risk by putting the onus on them to go chase people. Besides the fact that CIRSA has got some good records on that subject, it's not worth it. And lastly, I want to commend Deborah Perkins-Smith, because she, in my eyes, is the face of CDOT. If you noticed on your way in tonight, if you were on one of our freeways that has the signs, we have 535 deaths so far statewide, of which 115 are motorcycle. There's a message there, folks.
You do point out 2 sections in our report that I didn't put in my presentation, the construction zone and motorcycles.
And lastly, we are up this year over last year. The trend is going in the wrong direction. And particularly our most recent Arapahoe County accident that killed 6 people in one fell swoop.
Wow. Director Shakti.
So the number of fatalities has gone up sort of dramatically. If you break it down more, can you say what kind of fatalities? Like, has the number of pedestrian fatalities gone up, or car fatalities, or? And I guess the digging is really what's going on.
Yeah, the report will have a little more data in it. Actually, the pedestrian and bicycle ones really they've been roughly the same. They've gone up. It was really, I think when we looked at the data, as was mentioned by the mayor, is the high-speed careless driving has really been the big one. DUIs had been going down. I think they're, the impaired ones have been, but it's just been bad and inattentive, unalert driving. And we have a little bit more information on that in the report.
And how about?
Actually, did you add more to add on that?
And I'm just talking from a statewide perspective. I think this is shocking to people. They always think it's DUI. If you looked in your data, it was only 10%, 10, 12%. It's distracted driving. Mm-hmm. That's people, looking at their cell phone, looking at something on their console. So more than 25% is distracted driving. So I think that's pretty sobering. All this new technology, it's not something that's behavioral. That's not something that we can fix in the roadway. So,
thanks. Go ahead. You were done. I think Director Partridge and then Director Brockett and then Director Flynn.
Steve, thank you. Just got a quick questions kind of tying with Mayor Rakowski. Those statistics, about 20% of the deaths have been motorcycles. So your statistics are Denver region. How are you trending? And maybe this is a question for Deborah. She might be on, sir. How are you trending with Colorado for our deaths? Are they tied to motorcycles about the same trend? And then the second question is, how are we trending statewide since we've had an increase in the last couple of years? Is that trending with the state also?
The one we have in the report is on motorcycles, and that one I know we had called out as going up significantly. The fatalities between, at least between 14 and 15 had gone from about 37 up to about 56. So that's about half the state, I mean, in terms of the half of the total of the state. So I don't know how that compares to the total, but I'm guessing we are the biggest proportion of it, because when we looked at the total fatalities last year,
only 100.
where the whole state went up 55 or so, Denver region was about 48 of that increase. And we just found that out a few weeks ago when we got the final detailed geographic data in. At first I was thinking, well, we're usually about half of the state, so we're probably going to be about half of the statewide increase. We got that number in, I was floored that basically it was crashes and fatalities in the Denver region that made up the vast majority of the increase in the state last year of total fatalities.
Second question is how we are trending compared to the state for our increase in 14 and 15. Is that trending the same with the state?
Of total crashes, we're a lot higher.
You're a lot higher.
Yeah. Total fatalities. Total fatality.
And state is going up too, as you saw in the signs. We're already past now where we were last year. So by what, 50, I think.
Director Brockett?
Yeah, I was just going to note, and this problem is a nationwide one, not just the region and the state. There was an article in the New York Times a couple days ago, I don't know how many people saw that, but that the increase in fatalities is nationwide. And the article laid the blame just where Director Perkins-Smith was talking about it, distracted driving in particular, cell phones, consoles, things like that. So.
I mean, we do hope, and we have a section in our report on newer vehicle technology and things like that, and roadway technology also, when we have more of our cars in the future communicating with the roadway, and a lot of the cars now with all the alerts to lane deviation, automatic braking. It's going to take a while for the fleet to get more of those, but we certainly hope that helps. But the other side of me hopes that doesn't just encourage people to do more distracted things if they're thinking the car is safer.
So Director Flynn and then Director Norquist.
Thank you. I think I've already seen a lot of driverless cars out on I-25 because they. I wanted to point out that one of the bicycle fatalities for this year will be a friend of mine, a friend of RTD, Jeff Borma, who was a systems engineer on the Eagle project. So that's a very sad fact that's behind these bar graphs. I want to redirect or refocus this and ask you a question, Steve, if you can analyze the data in the final report. I'm actually favorably impressed with this slide up here, number 3, because it's the rate that I look at more so than the change since 1980. We actually had fewer traffic deaths than in 1980, the year I moved here, when we were probably about 2/3 the size we are now. And so I'm actually very impressed with that red line, even though there's a little spike here. But my question is, what can we do that impacts that? Because I think a lot of that has to do with Detroit et al. Building safer cars that are more survivable in crashes. How much of that decline in the rate do you think is due to factors that we can control and can do more going forward today?
Oh boy, oh boy. I don't know. Good night. No, there are certain elements. Obviously your local governments, have a lot more direct connections to schools, school districts, things like that, education, law enforcement. At this level here, we do fund transportation projects, as Doug mentioned earlier, in our transportation improvement program. We do have criteria for projects that give you points for that project if you have the good crash reduction potential, looking at the rate, looking at the type of project that it is. At the moment, in the current tip and in recent tips, we do not have a specific safety type of standalone project. Now, when we do different types of road and bike ped projects, we judge the safety element of those projects. But CDOT right now is really the keeper of the dollars and a large amount of money in terms of safety-specific projects. So that's where you'll get some of your things like the cable rail types of projects, the extremely valuable projects that have been done on roads like C470. Right now in the DRCOG tip, that alone really wouldn't be a project type. So that's something where we can look at that possibly in the next tip.
Thank you for mentioning that. I want to thank CDOT for the assistance with the funding for a new pedestrian hawk signal in my council district in southwest Denver by Loretto Heights. 2 years ago, we had 3 young people in a very short period of time who were killed as pedestrians there. Thank you.
Well, Director Norquist?
Will your report have motorcycle fatalities without helmets, information on that?
I forget if we have that in there or not. Right now, we do not, but we'll look at putting that in.
That'd be good. Director Atchison and then Director Millay.
Yeah, Steve, can you go back to the slide you were talking about, and I don't know how they qualified or quantified this in the, I would say almost like the citation that was given at the accident.
All right.
Yeah, it was back in
That is right.
There you go.
That one?
Go back one more.
One more. There we go.
Okay. Is this based upon what's determined at the time of the accident or at the disposition in the court case? Because many of those change dramatically depending upon plea agreements. And I'm concerned that that may be a misnomer of what actually gets settled versus what they're accused of.
My guess is it is the report itself on the scene. That's what I guess, but I'm going to check into that. That relates really closely to one of the other things that the there's a traffic records group with CDOT, and I know they're looking at changing their crash form this year is one thing, and your law enforcement will be seeing that next year when the new form comes out. But the other thing that they are looking at and also working with the health department is on follow-ups to the reports for things like, as you just mentioned, where the actual legal outcome was different, or in terms of the medical condition of the driver. They're not going to know things like that, and that's necessarily proven on the scene. That comes later, either through legal aspects or in the emergency room or places like that, whether it's alcohol or blood or drug testing, things like that. So that's something that is being worked on in terms of doing the post look at these crash records to see which ones should be modified or changed.
One of the things to Director Flynn's comment is that for what we can potentially do for our younger audience, the problem is that between the counties and the municipalities, we don't have any control over this driver training that used to be back in the early days of some of us offered. And I'm not aware of any school that still offers that. I think most of it has gone private. So if you want kids to be trained, then you've got to pay for them. Well, a lot of parents can't pay for it, so they don't get that training except through a brother or sister, aunt, uncle, mom, or dad. So the level of training and experience that they get supposedly is documented through the parents when they go to get that license, but who knows how much of it's really there and what kind of driving instruction they had. Unless we can find some way, and from an educational standpoint and educational funding, it's not coming back to the schools. They're not going to get anything, as we just heard, that K-factor is going to get worse. We have to do something on our own as parents. I'm lucky enough that mine are grown and gone. Now they're teaching their kids. But it's still going to be a problem of how we get people, the intellects in there, that take care of their own experience. And I think it was Deborah was talking about the distracted driving. We're creating that ourselves by putting more technology into the vehicles and not being able to put down a darn cell phone while you're driving. You can't come down to this meeting on any day of the week or any time and not see it on the highway. It's there every day, all day long.
I neglected to let Director Norquist finish his questions before I moved on to her.
I moved here from California about 11 years ago, and I was really shocked that a crotch rocket pulled up next to me without a helmet on. Is that not something that has been brought to the state legislature as mandatory helmet laws? Or?
Oh, it's just voted down. Yes.
Yeah, we don't. Good luck with that. So, Director Millay and then Deborah.
I guess I think this is all tragic information, and when you look, but for this organization, what I am the most concerned about is what of these we can do something about, right? So we don't have, as was stated by Director Atchison, the ability to control the education of drivers. We don't have the ability to stop distracted driving. We don't have funding to do any of that. So when we look at this data in relation to what DRCOG can do, I do think there are things that, the e-ticketing is getting officers off the side of roads quicker, so they're not sitting out there. I think the traffic management around accidents is also really important. I know when the city of Lone Tree was trying to advocate for the lane balancing project on I-25, I actually had our chief of police at the time come down and testify, for those of you that remember, because to talk about the number of accidents on that stretch of highway, because it was a funnel. But I think what we need to keep in mind while we're here, while this is all tragic, is really what we have the ability to do something about. Frankly, I wonder if we should be talking to car companies to actually turn off the device. I mean, as parents, I would love to be able to turn my child's phone off when they're in the car, right? To program that so it does not work for them. So anyway, I guess I just want us to keep that in mind. And as you prepare this report for us, I would like you to identify areas where you actually think we can do something that's going to make a difference at this entity versus, I think we can certainly support anecdotally CDOT's efforts.
So maybe to follow on that just a little bit, I don't know, Steve, what the metro area statistics look like in terms of fatalities, occupants not wearing seatbelts. I know statewide, 1/3 of the fatalities, the occupants were not wearing seatbelts. And Colorado does not have a primary seatbelt law. So
I think ours was about 1/4. That was a much greater rural
it's more of a rural, so I don't know,
if we were about 1/4.
But still 1/4?
I think, yeah.
Wow. Director Jay.
I think I'm most amazed when I look at these fatality lists that bicycle fatalities are only at 3%. But is that because there's just fewer bike riders?
Right, that's 3% of the total total fatalities.
Right. Which is also, it's amazing that it's stayed the same or gone down, indicating, and there are more bike riders out there. So I'm rather encouraged by that.
Yeah, part of the orange line, the orange line going down much steeper than the blue bar or the raw numbers is just because there were so many more automobile fatalities last year that it made that orange line as a percent. It's a little deceiving.
Okay.
In terms of like what happened in a 1 year.
Percent.
It's just that
based
unfortunately
on volume.
auto went up so much.
Okay, so much for that delight.
Way to try to find some good news in that.
Yeah, I was trying there.
Director Sullivan.
Just to follow up on your bicycle data, do you track what percentage of the accidents, excuse me, for bicycles were fatal of the total accidents?
Yes. Yes.
Do you know what that number is?
That is in here, and I can. The total number of bicycle crashes was the grand total crashes in the region was 2,590. Oh wait, no, that's 3 years. So basically, that's 3 years. So about 850 a year of total bicycle crashes in the area. About 100 are seriously injured. About 100 people are seriously injured, a little bit under that. And then as noted here, approximately 7 per year are killed.
But still less than.
And I don't know this year's number, but I know I've heard of several, as was mentioned, several in the news.
All right.
Interesting report.
Any final questions? Thanks, Steve. You got the most robust discussion of the evening.
Drive carefully, walk carefully, bike carefully.
Bike carefully.
Be alert.
You all will note I have not yet announced the nominating committee votes, and I'm not going to till the committee reports are done, just to hold you in suspense. So I'll start off with the committee reports from the State Transportation Advisory Committee. Our October meeting, we were briefed on CDOT's budget, which is due to be approved by the Transportation Commission this month. We continued to talk about criteria for the 10-year development program and Senate Bill 228 project selection. CDOT's meeting with each region to talk about what are their prioritized projects. We're going to get a briefing on that at the next DRCOG board meeting on December 7th. Probably the most important thing about the meeting was it was our annual retreat where we met with some of the members of the Transportation Commission to really talk very frankly about a relationship with the Transportation Commission and how we could improve communication. And I think it was a pretty healthy discussion. I wasn't able to stay for the entire time, so I don't know if there's more you would add, Doug. Or so that's the latest from STAC. Director Atchison, you want to talk about Metro Mayors?
Yeah, the last time the caucus met was on October the 5th. We did get an update briefing from RTD. Dave Genova was there at the caucus. However, that was long before the FRA meetings and the updates on the A-line, B-line, which continues in the news. I know they're on their 90-day extension for the time being. Haven't heard any reports out of them on what's going on since they came back from FRA, so I'm assuming that'll be coming out soon. Jim Gunning will be succeeding Don Hunt on the mobility choice blueprint piece. I know that still is being worked not only by RTD but Denver Chamber as well, Metro Mayors and a couple of other groups, see where that's going to go. Kim Day did report on some of the early planning on the changes out at DIA. Kevin, you may have more information detailed on that, but I think the entire thing is to make sure that we can move people through the whole hall, looking at totally moving the check-in points and the security pieces around to make that whole big plaza there open and more useful, so we could stop some of the gridlock for people going out there. That's pretty well about it. The only other thing I was going to ask Ron and Laura, I think the date for the legislative reception for the county commissioners and the Metro Mayors, if I recall, is December 14th? December 14th, so if you're not a mayor, you're here representing your city, make sure they understand that we do need them there. County commissioners, I think all the county commissioners are invited. That is a big part of our kickoff each year. These two groups partner together on this on an annual basis to talk to our legislators, let them know what's going on and get the stuff going. So, and Ron may have some more on that.
Just the point of there must be an RSVP if your city plan or county plans to attend. That's strict rules from CCI and Metro Mayors, or MAC, I mean, and Metro Mayors.
Which could be a good segue to the Metro Area County Commissioners. Since Don's not here, I'll report. We did talk about the upcoming reception, which is now billed as a regional reception rather than just a legislative reception, which is, I think, a useful broadening of focus. Our last meeting, we heard from all of the state associations, sheriffs, treasurers, coroners, etc., about their upcoming legislative priorities. We do not have a report on the AAA. Shakti, do you want to talk about the rec?
The main thing we did was work on recommendations to the state for how the VW settlement is spent, and the areas of discussion were how much of it goes to transit and how much is specifically electric and how much is open to natural gas, basically. So you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but my memory is we did 50% to transit, of that 25% electric, with 15% of the total going to EV charging.
I think that's right. Director Rakowski?
We had a very short housekeeping meeting in November. Nothing else to report.
All right. Bill Van Meet. Oh.
Don't go with the 13th. We aren't going to be there. Some people might be because I pulled up multiple emails.
You know what? That was for a meeting next year. That was a different. That was for.
Okay, I've got it in my calendar. I'm glad I spoke up. Thank you.
Bill.
Thank you, Chair. A brief report from RTD regarding fast tracks. A lot of my updates over the past few months have focused either on progress on our currently funded projects and on the topic of the financial constraints. And so I trust that this board's well informed on those two aspects of the Fast Tracks program. One, progress in our current projects. Director Atchison just referenced the 90-day extension on the University of Colorado A line, and certainly if there are any questions regarding that FRA waiver extension for the University of Colorado A line and the B line and its impacts, I'd be happy to answer those questions. But a lot of the focus has been on those projects underway and on the near to midterm financial constraints at RTD. So I'm switching gears a little bit and letting this body know that we continue to work with stakeholders in each of the corridors, the 4 unfunded corridors. As recently as this morning, we had a meeting with stakeholders on the Southwest Corridor extension that was attended by Director Partridge and other folks in Jefferson County, Douglas County, Highlands Ranch, Arapahoe County as well. So that was a discussion to look at whether there are any opportunities, as slim as they may be, given RTD's financial constraints for moving that project forward. Similarly, we meet on a fairly regular basis with representatives from Adams County and NATA, the North Area Transportation Alliance. I think that's the proper articulation of that organization. To discuss options and opportunities to complete the North Metro project north of 124th to State Highway 7. And finally, we're also working with the U.S. 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, who have approached RTD with some ideas and proposals that could potentially contain the costs of implementing the Northwest Rail Line to Longmont. Those options revolve around very limited weekday peak period only service and looking at what sort of opportunities and constraints there are, working with the BNSF, as well as very limited levels of service that might bring costs down and bring that project in some form sooner rather than later. So we are working with local stakeholders on these projects, even given progress in our current projects and our financial constraints. That's my update and report this month.
Thank you. And we wanted to ask Deborah if she wanted to report briefly on the road usage charge program.
Certainly. So you may have seen an article in the paper this past week. I was actually at a conference, so it got sent to me. But we are doing a pilot program. There are numerous other states that are doing something similar. As you may be well aware, this is a good thing, as we get more fuel-efficient vehicles, our state gas tax, we get less and less money in terms of state gas tax. So a lot of states are looking at, what are our alternatives to funding? So one thing that a number of states are looking at is called the road usage charge. It actually measures how many miles you drive and charge based on that, as opposed to how much gas you buy. So we're doing a pilot of about 100 participants, and that will start shortly in 2 weeks. If you're interested, We have limited spaces, but if you're interested and think you might want to sign up and just be one of our test cases to see how this all works in terms of equipment in your car, or just how the whole thing would work, you can do that. You can also just sign up to get information. So when you first go in, you can sign up and you get just information. If you want to do more than that, then you can actually sign up for the program. And we're trying to find people with different fuel efficiency in terms of their vehicles, some people in rural, kind of get a dispersed group to just find out, so what happens when you do this. So we're actually selecting participants, and like I said, there's a limited number of spaces, 100. But if you're interested, you can go to the CDOT website. The CDOT website is actually CO for Colorado, CODOT, so that's coloradodot.gov. And if you go there and just search for RUC, which is the road usage charge, or put in road usage charge, it'll take you right to that page, and there's information on it. So I'm sure you'll be seeing more in the press. We actually have some press members that are going to participate in this as well, as well as state legislators.
Wonderful. All right, so the vote results are, the top vote getter is George Teal. Congratulations. And following in our tradition, I will also be guided in my pick by the vote count, and Shakti, you will also be serving on the nominating committee. So, congratulations. And I assume Connie will help the nominating committee find a time to meet sometime in the next month? I'll be sending out a doodle poll, sure. All right. Any last announcements from anyone before we close? All right, everyone travel safely.